It's another November collapse for Mario Cristobal's Miami Hurricanes. And we're here to talk about why it's happening and what happens next, both in the long term and the short term.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I'm here to talk to you again. That's me and all of us. Every freaking November. Every time we think this team is on track to get to an ACC championship or get to a college football playoff, the rug gets pulled out every time. We pour our hearts and souls into supporting this team, into covering this team, into understanding what a special group of players this is, what potential this team can has when they're playing right. And now for the second straight season, you're in a situation where you have a roster that is way too talented not to be playing for ACC championships and way too talented not to be among the top 12 teams in the country when playoff time rolls around. And every year, we get let down. Coaching on down, and we're going to talk about all of it on this episode following Miami's 26-20 overtime loss against SMU. A soul-crushing loss because, if you saw the actual talent, if you saw the actual production, Miami had no business losing that football game. This one, to me, feels worse than Louisville because I can at least look at Louisville's team and say, you know what? They got some talent. Jeff Brom did an incredible job. I didn't feel like Rhett Lashley did anything extraordinary in that game yesterday except allow his team to maybe make a few less mistakes than Miami made. This self-inflicted stuff is absolutely soul-crushing. I am Alex Donno, by the way, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes radio network. You can imagine Postgame was fun. Postgame was like a root canal yesterday. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Good times or bad times, I appreciate the everydayers. You guys are awesome. You guys are the ones that I do this for. I do it because I love this team. I do it because I love this program, but I would not be doing it if not for the support of our listeners and viewers. So thank you so much. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We have so much coming up on this loaded Sunday episode. I'm giving you guys the opportunity to vent because I will be reading comments and questions that came in to my X account at Alex Donno and to the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. You can click the link in the show description below if you want to join that. We'll talk about the coaching realities, right? From head coach on down, what can happen and what can change in the near future and in the long-term future, because there are certain realities of the situation that all of you and all of us need to understand. Yeah, we'll talk about the November fades. What is so different about the month of November versus the month of September? If we could play like it's September all year long, Miami would never lose, apparently. But November rolls around, and it's every damn year with this team. Okay, let's start with the fatal flaws here. And this is stuff that, and the patterns are the same, which is part of the frustration. Definition of insanity stuff. Doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. The fatal flaws that cost Miami a loss in Dallas are the same fatal flaws that cost them a loss a couple weeks prior against Louisville. And some of the same stuff, different face on it, but some of the same stuff that cost Miami losses last year in a season where, Miami had way too good of an offense and way too good of a quarterback last year not to be a college football playoff team. We got rug pulled. This year, way too good of a defense and way too much offensive talent not to be a college football playoff team. And barring an absolute miracle, we've been rug pulled again. Against SMU, Miami Hurricanes penalized 12 times for 96 yards. Is that a pattern? You're damn right it's a pattern. Miami ranks 124th nationally in penalties per game, meaning there are only 10 teams in all of FBS football who commit more penalties than the Miami Hurricanes. So we're one of the 11 most undisciplined teams in America. And yeah, if you were following my social media yesterday, some of you were doing the same thing. Yeah, there were certain calls in the SMU game where I thought Miami got hosed on some of those. Absolutely, some terrible calls made, but a lot of those, most of those, were the man in the mirror. Miami doing it to themselves. Self-inflicted wounds. I know some of the calls, we love to berate the ACC officials who overall do a terrible job, and that's not just in games involving Miami. In general, overall, they do a terrible, terrible job. But it doesn't excuse the fact that Miami is one of the 11 most penalized teams in America. The most glaring repeat offenders, by the way, are the offensive linemen. Momentum killing, false start penalties, time and time and time again, which is extra frustrating because that's the most talented group on your entire team. Well, either them or the D-line, right? And, the D-line, we've had some of those offside contact penalties happening week after week. But you've got an offensive line that is so good physically and statistically, and yet they find a way to sabotage the offense time and time again. And yes, I know it's the players who are the ones who are literally committing the penalties. But in my eyes, at a certain point, that stat of being one of the top 11 most penalized teams in all of FBS football, which happens time and time again to Miami, that stat falls primarily on coaching. When nothing has been successfully done to fix or to mitigate the problem, when you preach a culture of discipline and accountability, but it's not translating to the field, we have a problem. And I don't know exactly what the problem is. And anybody who claims to know exactly what the problem is lying to you, because practices during the season are not open. Now, I know they have referees at every practice. I'm sure that with all the penalty problems, this is something they drill into the minds of their players. But whatever the approach is, it is not working. And yeah, I'm not here to put the blame 100% on coaching or 100% on players. But this is one where when nothing seems to work or to mitigate the problem, you've got to chalk this one up to coaching. It's one of the biggest problems culturally Miami has right now. And for some reason, Mario Cristobal has been to this point incapable of fixing it. Another issue, I'm not going to say this has been, one of the fatal flaws overall, but it was a fatal flaw in that loss yesterday. Some very untimely drops. In a game that was way closer than it should have been. The margins should not have been that thin, but they were. When JoJo Trader, who had scored a brilliant touchdown earlier in the game, bobbled that pass that went for an interception, that was the turning point of the football game. That play derailed a promising Miami drive, gave SMU the momentum. They scored a touchdown to tie it up on their next play. Another drop by Elijah Lofton in the SMU game on what would have been a touchdown ended up being decisive. Miami had to kick a field goal there, take a 3-point lead into halftime instead of a 7-point lead. And yeah, Lofton was hit hard, but he had the football in his arms, couldn't hold on to it. We're all talking about coaching, right? We're all talking about the decisions that are being made. Taking the points has been a debate. Unfortunately, Miami's had situations in these close games where if you choose to kick makeable field goals, instead of going for it and failing on fourth downs, you would have had a couple of extra wins here instead of a couple of extra losses. In both of Miami's L's so far, situations where a makeable field goal was not tried, instead going for it on fourth down and ultimately failing, which is also an indictment on play calling and play execution on those fourth downs. I mean, we had a play where we called a timeout before the fourth and short play to get an extra huddle, and then the play that we came out with was a failure. These plays, I get it, are easy to second guess, but even my 7-year-old son was watching the game with me and screaming at the TV, kick the field goal, go for the points. Another fatal flaw, and this is a big picture and little picture thing. This was something that happened in the SMU game and has been, and this is very well pointed out by Miami Hurricanes superfan and boxing analyst Steve Kim, who has been making some great points on his X timeline, shortening the game. Miami's ball control style, time of possession-based offense, they had 37 and a half minutes of time of possession to 22 and a half in the game yesterday and still lost. But the problem is, when you play that sort of ball control, time of possession style, You shrink the margins by shortening the game, and you actually give the advantage to your less talented opponents. Because when you have a big talent advantage, but you choose to bleed the clock, run fewer plays, and shorten the game, you give fewer chances to your own talent to create separation on the scoreboard. That, to me, is one of the fatal philosophical flaws. If people are always asking, hey, I think Miami, they lead the nation in the last 4 years of losing games where they're double-digit favorites. Well, you know how you make that happen by shrinking the margins and shortening the game for yourself when you have the more talented roster. I thought that was a great point brought up by Steve Kim. All right, so how bad have things actually been the last 3.5 years in the month of November? We're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about the realities of Miami's coaching staff and what has to happen moving forward. Oh, boy, this is a tough day. Miami just suffered their second loss of the season. 6-2. College football playoff hopes on absolute life support. ACC championship game hopes, same deal. You want to keep it locked right here. We're talking about the why and the what happens next on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, we are proudly brought to you by Game Time. Despite recent events, I still love college football. I love the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself, with endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Folks, honestly, Game Time is faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. There's no hidden fees, and I love how you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You need to try this, and here's another reason to try it. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. When you download the Game Time app, create an account, make sure you use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, and they're going to give you $20 off your first purchase. It's $20 off just by using our code Locked On College. Terms apply and get $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. And why this frustrating? By the way, we're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And I appreciate my guy Grease on the postcast show yesterday, because he had an epic rant and he was very emotional, and I love the work that he does, because like me, he bleeds orange and green. We're both Miami alums. We've loved this program going back to the 80s, and I'm honored to be able to share my platform with a passionate guy who loves the program like I do. So awesome job on the postcast by Grease, and this is tough, man. I admire what he did. He was here on the postcast. I was on WQAM on the post-game show. We're struggling here because, Miami is going to need absolute miracles now, and that's even if they finish 10-2, which is not a guarantee. I mean, you still have what could be a tricky game against Virginia Tech, what could be a very difficult game at Pittsburgh, and also let's not sleep on NC State. NC State just upset Georgia Tech yesterday at their homecoming game. NC State's going to be coming to our stadium in a couple of weeks. So by no means am I saying Miami's going to go 10-2. But what I am saying is if they do go 10-2, it's probably not enough to get into the ACC championship game or the college football playoff. You're staring at the exact same situation you were in last year. The fans deserve better. The players deserve better, because that team is too good and too talented to be on the outside looking in 2 years in a row. I mean, the 2023 Canes, that was not a college football playoff roster. 2022 Canes, obviously not. 2024 and 2025, I believe this team should be good enough to be top 12 in the country, and we're more than likely going to miss out on that for the second straight year. All right, so let's look at the realities. The last couple of years, really the last few years, this team often starts the season well. I mean, we look like a juggernaut. 5 games into the season, you had college football analysts saying Miami might be the best team in the country. Miami should be ranked number 1. Josh Pate from On3 referring to all the creatures, that Miami's roster is different from anyone else in the nation, including Ohio State, including Indiana, who's steamrolling everybody. And yet, how do our creatures get off to a 6-2 start and lose a couple of disappointing games, especially SMU, the way that we have? So, all right, so the past 4 seasons now, I mean, we're first game of November for this year, November 1st, but past 4 seasons under Mario Cristobal, Miami is now 4-9 in the month of November. 4-9. My opinions as to why. I would love to hear from you guys on this, but my opinions as to why this team struggles so much late in the season. Hurricanes start the year like gangbusters. Every single year, September and early weeks of October start so well because the team is so talented and so physically imposing. We play such a taxing physical style of football that we not only get physically tired for the stretch run of the season, it's my opinion, some might disagree about that, but Miami's straightforward bully ball approach also gets predictable. And once that film gets out, right? I mean, you're able to beat teams like Notre Dame and a good USF team. You win rivalry games against Florida and Florida State early on in the season because you're physically at your best and your trends have not been figured out because there's only either 0 games of film in the case of Notre Dame or only a couple of games of film out there. But by November, our straightforward approach gets predictable and we can be figured out. We're seeing it year after year. Nick Saban mentioned something this week, who greatest college coach of all time, but also a great example of evolution, right? He mentioned that he made, for his career, the necessary adjustments to his offensive philosophy, adjusting to a modern, pass-first, spread offense with tempo and RPOs. And I think in the case of Miami's staff, adaptation is absolutely needed. It is absolutely needed moving forward. So what happens next for Miami Hurricanes football? All right, let's start with the small picture, and then we'll get to the big picture, because both of these things are important. We still have 5 games left, including a bowl game. Season is not over. I know that several of our fans doing what fans do now. You're throwing in the towel, giving up on the season because Miami's chances at the college football playoff have now shrunk, not completely to 0, but to near 0. But I hope, and I'm saying this with true sincerity, I hope that Miami's players and coaches do not succumb to that attitude, because this team still has 5 games left to play, including a bowl game. And we may be Pop-Tart bound again, which I know doesn't excite anybody. But when it comes to the future of this football program, I want to give these guys, even if playoffs are now virtually off the table, I still want to see adjustment and adaptation. I want to see if they can correct as many of their mistakes as possible and finish the season with pride and with victories. That does matter to me. Am I pissed that they're probably going to miss the ACC championship and the college football playoff yet again? Absolutely. But I still want to see winning habits developed and sharpened, and I want to see mistakes corrected, if possible, please. I know to this point, haven't been able to correct the penalties, haven't been able to correct the self-destruction, but I still want to give them an opportunity to do that. That's why I'm not throwing in the towel on the season. Several of the foundational players on this team are going to be presumably back next year, and I want to see them propel themselves into 2026 with momentum. Malachi Toney, Joshua Moore, Marty Brown, Jordan Lyle, Marquise Lightfoot, Armando Blunt, just to name a few. Let's finish the season strong and hopefully on a high note. And I know that, and this is a tricky one, it really is. I see a lot of people on my timeline who are like, hey, you might as well bench CARSON BECK for the rest of the season and see if EMORY WILLIAMS gives you something for the future. That's a really, really tough one, because I get the fan argument is, we know Beck is gone next year. No more eligibility left. So you want to see what you have. At the same time, I don't expect anyone in that coaching staff to want to send the message that we've thrown in the towel on the season. So that's something that might happen after your next loss. God forbid you lose another game. That's something that might happen then. But as long as you're still not mathematically out of the ACC championship and you're not mathematically out of the college football playoff until you lose again or until the final week of the year, I think you still put your best 22 starters out there until you're mathematically out of it. But again, I know it's a tough topic, and I understand the argument of, we want to see what the backup quarterbacks can do. There might be a time and a place for that. I don't believe that time is yet because, again, Miami has not been officially eliminated from any of their big goals, so I want to table that conversation for later, okay? All right, let's talk big picture when we come back because I see a lot of people saying, hey, it's time for the head coach to go. It's time for the coordinators to go. Well, not both of them, one of them. And it's time for XYZ coach to go. Here's the reality of what can happen and what should happen. We're going to have that for you when we come back. We're not done yet. You want to keep it locked on this new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, it's another NFL Sunday today. The NBA season is in full swing now, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score to the fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen, and we appreciate the everydayers. Okay, so let's talk big picture for Miami's football future, because I see a large number of people. I don't necessarily think it's the majority, but people get very loud on my comment section, in my X mentions, on the message boards. Some people saying, fire Mario. It's time to get rid of Mario Cristobal. Now, for those who are saying it, I can't necessarily tell if you're just saying it to say it because it makes you feel a little bit better to vent about it, or if you really think that's something that's going to happen right now. Spoiler alert, it's not going to happen right now, nor should it happen right now for logical reasons. Let's start with this. Mario Cristobal, his buyout, $61 million. That's $7 more million than LSU just paid to fire Brian Kelly in one of the most expensive buyouts ever. So I can confidently say there is no fiscal or financial sense, unless one of you listening has an extra $61 million laying around and you want to foot that bill. It makes no financial sense whatsoever, and it's absolutely not going to happen. And I want to make this loud and clear. And this may not be a popular thing to say, given the landscape right now, but I still support Mario Cristobal. I believe he has the best interests of this football program and this university at heart. I believe you would not find another head coach on planet Earth who has the passion and love for this university that he has. And I think he has done amazing things to set up this roster, to build this roster. And I am hoping and praying, like I am literally praying, that the hard work, the love, and the passion that he puts into this program are going to start to translate into sustained success. And of course, what he's doing on the recruiting trail, what he has done, and what he hopefully will continue to do on the trail and in the transfer portal, when it comes to roster building, it's been incredible. But Roman Kane from the Orange Bowl boys said it very well on social media. He said, Mario is it in a good way, with providing you the launch pad and the talent to move this program into a national championship contender. But Mario is not it when it comes to being adaptive, responsive, and imaginative enough on game days. And listen, we talked about that Nick Saban comment earlier. Saban was a mentor to Mario. I hope they have a chat, right? I hope that, Mario calls Nick maybe for some advice on how to adapt and what direction to go into. So, I mean, listen, if you choose not to support Mario, that's your decision to make. But in the interest of this program and wanting to see this turn around and get better, I will continue to support him because I want to see him turn this around. And quite frankly, there is no path to firing him right now. It's a complete non-starter, okay? And also, not to mention, with other massive jobs currently open, like LSU, Florida, Penn State, and a bunch of others, It's terrible timing to create a head coaching vacancy. This is the worst time to do it, okay? So, again, the idea of making a head coaching change is not a reasonable suggestion right now. Can we expect changes to the offensive staff? I think there's absolutely a possibility of that. And this is just me spitballing. This is not based on any inside info. I'm not saying that, they're thinking about, I don't know, but I think there's absolutely a possibility of that. Mario has not been shy about making coordinator changes in the past. I think he hit a home run with Corey Heatherman, who seems to be doing an awesome job with the defense right now. I think in the case of the offense last year, I think Cam Ward covered up a lot of warts. And, Carson Beck is not able, I don't think anyone is able to cover up warts in the way that Cam Ward was a year ago. The offense is holding this team back, same way the defense did last year. Mario, again, he's not been hesitant in the past to make coordinator changes or staff changes. So I think all of that is on the table. Let's get through some fan comments and questions. I went through a lot of these on X. And by the way, if I don't get to yours, I'm sorry, because not to toot my own horn, but I had like hundreds of comments in my X inbox because you guys are all very passionate. My guy Salty Rand says, hey, what's killing us worse right now? Lack of execution or predictability? The answer to that is yes. Both, right? Predictability puts you in a situation where you better execute to perfection. Because if you're predictable, you better just be better than them, right? You remember last season, those times when Cam Ward would point to exactly where Miami was going to run the ball, they would execute those plays. Like, again, like if you execute perfectly, you can get away with being predictable. But if you're predictable, you better execute perfectly. So those are both issues. But you know what? You'd probably give yourself a little more margin for error if you weren't so predictable. Edward says, once again, in both losses, we don't take the easy field goal when we have it. Kick it and potentially win by 3 and no overtime. I don't care which way we run or how bad it looks. The decisions are horrible. We just don't like what's there. We should have won this game, no question, even in a close one. And listen, yeah, I know that there are we talked about that earlier, by the way, not taking the points. There are analytical debates you can make on all of these plays, and I know the last couple seasons, I get the sense that Mario has really embraced analytics, and he's got someone in his ear giving him like, hey, the book. Like if you ever play blackjack, it's like, hey, the book says you need to hit and hold in certain situations. Like I think he's going more by the book. So before embracing analytics, when it comes to big decisions, the instincts were off and the analytics were off. I think the analytics are now there, but the instincts are not. So it's part of the way fixed, but it's not all the way fixed because unfortunately, great game day coaching doesn't go by the analytic book every single time. And they flash those things on ESPN. It's like on one of those fourth downs we came up short. It was like, hey, it's 75% or 80%, you're supposed to go for it in that situation. I mean, okay, if you're going to go for it, maybe you'll have a better play call, better execution, or maybe you take the point. So there are analytic debates, but the instincts are also very, very important. Guts got something for you, says, what a great Twitter name. When will the team's discipline be translated to game day? If I knew the answer to that, this would have been a really short episode. I would have just given you the answer on, off, and then I would have given it to the coaching staff, and we would never lose again. Unfortunately, it's a great question, but a question I do not have an answer to. We get one from Big Time MBA who says, does Dawson have a quarterback that fits his offense on the roster? He mentioned, Geno Smith, who Dawson coached back in the day, Cam Ward, who he coached last year, both first-round picks. They were mobile. He says, is there buyer's remorse with Beck or the coaching staff? Conference championship and playoffs out of the picture. What's next for Canes football? Yeah, I mean, I think I don't, necessarily, when it comes to the mobility factor, obviously Carson Beck is limited there. I think Emory Williams is limited there. Luke Nickel was pretty mobile in high school, but he's so young. It's like, Luke isn't ready yet. I think the guy that they have verbally committed in the upcoming class, Darion Coleman, I think is a really good fit. He's like a slightly shorter version of Cam Ward. That's just attributes, folks. I'm not saying he's going to be Cam Ward, but just saying like he has the similar, profile to the way he plays. So maybe that would be the guy who currently fits Dawson's roster best. And in terms of like buyer's remorse with Carson Beck, I understand why they went out and got Beck. I mean, you're talking about someone with his experience level, the big games that he's played through, what he's done statistically. I guess the buyer's remorse would be, should they have made a harder push at Fernando Mendoza? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they listen to the fans on that one, because I remember when Mendoza hit the transfer portal, I brought his name up on Locked On Canes, and the comments were so angry that I even brought the name up because you guys all thought he sucks. And, maybe the coaching staff should have gone in that direction. Miami Columbus grad, I would assume he probably grew up a Miami fan, or at least watching Miami. But, we can't go back in time. Or no, despite the flux capacitor in my studio background here, we cannot actually go back in time, unfortunately. Let's see. I think I answered this one earlier. Should we just start Emory Williams at quarterback and see what we have? That was from American Tweeter Guy. I know a lot of fans will say that, but again, like you're not mathematically out of anything yet, so you can't wave the white flag. It's just, it sends the wrong message to the locker room. You can't do it. If you suffer another loss, we can have that conversation another day, I think. Someone says, this is Get Some, who says, I can't believe SMU sent out Tyler Van Dyke as one of their team captains, and the Canes didn't see red and go on a killing spree. SOFT soft. Yeah, Lashley trolled us a little bit with the team captains. Some of y'all forgot that Tyler Van Dyke is still in college. I hope he's a triple PhD by now. And he's going to be in college longer. Like he may stick around there till 27 or 28 before he uses his final year of eligibility at SMU. Oh, man. We get this one from John Conde, who says, overrated Miami offensive line. Also look at how these third and fourth short yardage plays are constantly blown up right in the middle, seemingly through the center. I know it's not just him. I love my Canes, but this is the truth. I guess you could say the O-line is overrated. I still think they're really good, and that comes with a caveat. Let me explain. Miami's offensive line has done a better job protecting their quarterback than any other offensive line in the country. That's real. They keep a cleaner pocket for Carson Beck than any other O-line in America does for their quarterback. The run blocking has not been consistent enough, as you bring up there, and the penalties, to me, are unforgivable. So if you're going to look at a reason why you could say the offensive line is overrated, they're undisciplined, which is, again, I'm dumbfounded by it. Like, I really am, because that group is excellent. There are multiple future NFL players on that offensive line, including a guy in Francis Malinoa who's about to be a first-round draft pick. And, yeah, the execution has not been good enough. We get this one from the 770 area code. A question for your next pod. What do we do about the officiating? With the data we have showing clear bias with no flags or picked up flags for real penalties and far too many game-affecting calls, there has to be something UM can do to cast a light on years of poor officiating. Yeah, and like I went out of my way for the first 33 minutes of this not to, bring up all the terrible calls. I may have brought it up once, actually, but it's like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm blaming that solely for the loss, because, again, the game shouldn't have been close. Like, Miami should not have even been in a situation to get hosed by calls, but they did get hosed by some of those calls. And this is not strictly a Miami thing, because ACC officiating has been poor, but as he points out, Miami is dead last in the ACC in penalties called on their opponents, and near the bottom of the entire country in penalties called against opponents. And that's not just some crazy coincidence. You see uncalled hold, and they did actually call one holding on Ruben Bain, on a player holding him, which was nice to see, but it happens on virtually every play. And we saw some horrific calls that, had one of those calls gone or not gone against Miami, maybe they win the game. But again, I'm not blaming that for the losses and the performances. But in terms of what Miami can do, they send footage probably weekly. They send footage to the ACC and show them these are calls that were missed. You guys need to do something about this. So I don't know what else Miami can do outside of that, because there are official channels for them to send things and send complaints and grievances and video footage to the ACC in terms of calls that are getting missed. That might be the reason why they actually did call one holding on Ruben Bain in the game. So they're doing something. The ACC is not doing anything about it. So I don't know if Miami's doing enough. I don't know if Mario needs to get on the microphone and complain about it, but that's risky because, A, if you complain about the officiating at the podium, they're probably going to find you. And if you complain about the officiating, what's going to happen is people are going to pull a 30-second clip of it, and they're going to say, loser coach is blaming officials for his team losing games, even if that's not the intention. So, he's got to be tactful with the way he does it, but I know that they're sending in footage to the conference, and they're trying to get something done about it. So let me know in the comments, guys. What do you want to happen with the coaching staff? Do you start to strongly consider a change in the direction of the offensive coaching? How do we fix the penalties? Because, again, if anybody knows, we're going to get rich off of this. So let me know in the comments below. And I want to sincerely thank everyone for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're here for you through the good, through the bad, and through the ugly. We're here every single day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. I think we're going to have the truth teller on a Monday because Bruce cannot wait another day. So we're gonna have that tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.